gave me. I should have looked farther, but yeah.
Thank you. There it goes. All right, welcome everybody to the March 27th Planning Board. The first item we're having is a public hearing for site plan review for Maine Water Company. Map U3 Lot 08 on Powerhouse Road. It's a proposed replacement drinking water facility. So I will go ahead and open the floor. Anyone from the public has comments, questions, otherwise? The only thing I ask is before you do, just introduce yourself. Name, and if you're a Parkfield resident. Yes.
Yeah, we live on 34 Gardner Avenue on Deb Jackson. I'd like to know if that black stuff that accumulates in our faucets, in our nose, is going to be gone. I'm tired of scrubbing it out.
Okay.
The tank on the back of my commode is black on the inside.
Okay.
Is that going to be gone, or are we still going to have the same problem?
I mean, we can certainly address that. And you guys, I don't know if you guys are prepared to address that now, but that concern.
I mean, I have some additional comments. The existing wells were a little bit higher in iron and manganese. Manganese specifically does cause the, the blackness in there. Our new wells that we have show a reduction in that. I can't say that it's going to be gone, but the manganese numbers are better, so that should at least get better.
Well, let's hope, because I'm tired of scrubbing that black crap out of everything. It's up in the faucets, it's in my shower hose, it gets on the shower head, the back of the commode. Inside the rim on the commode is black. The sink underneath the rim, if I don't clean it every week, it's just black. And we're drinking that water.
I can provide some context. So the existing, the new wells that were constructed, those were the replacements for the wells, the existing wells that have the high manganese. We cited the new wells and did a very long duration pump test in the design of the new wells. So water quality has much lower concentrations of iron and manganese. So we're quite confident that the water quality part of this project is going to significantly improve.
I hope so.
So the wells, again, the wells that we're replacing are very old wells, and the treatment facility is a very old facility. So this facility is aimed at improving the water quality, but also for improving the reliability of the potable water system that serves the community.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
Jeff?
my name is Jeff Wright from Parkersfield. Did they have a sidewalk on this?
We scheduled a sidewalk for Saturday. Due to the weather, it was canceled. We have not had a sidewalk.
Okay. All right, is there gonna be a sidewalk?
We'll discuss that later as to what
Okay,
our plan is.
all right.
Yeah. But we had planned to do that Saturday, but Mother Nature decided to remind us that it was not, in fact, the end of winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many wells is this new well gonna serve? Or how many houses is this new well gonna serve?
So there's so the same number of customers that are currently supplied with Maine water would continue to be supplied by the new facility in the new wells. It's two new wells. One well, it's basically two wells. Only one of the wells is needed to meet all of the water needs of the community. So there's a backup supply. So either one could get a backup for the other.
Right.
And they're both designed in accordance with the drinking water program regulations. They're both off from the properties, off from Powerhouse Road. And they're both set a certain distance away and designed strategically to maximize the capacity of the wells, but also to avoid the high manganese of the existing wells. So basically, these wells are located further away from the reservoir.
Mhm.
The reservoir, we believe, had because they were closer, the existing wells are closer to the reservoirs. We think geologically that had some influence in why there was elevated manganese in those wells. These wells are further away, in a better part of the aquifer where the water quality is better. So there's been a lot of study over the years that began in 2015 with a test well actually.
Okay, do they have any kind of holding tank or reserve tank?
But yeah, there's two water storage tanks in the system. And where are those located, Marcus?
Not far from the treatment facility, but I can't
Yeah,
remember the
they're
road name.
two tanks. I think each one is 500,000 gallons. They're concrete tanks.
Is that the one that's off of Elm Street on Reservoir Road?
Yeah, yes, yep.
Yeah.
it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is this a natural occurrence, this magnesium thing?
Manganese is yes. So manganese and iron, they're naturally occurring minerals. The manganese levels, there's no regulated public health issue related to the manganese levels that are in the existing wells. It's like you said, the black color. It's the aesthetic water quality that people see. It's not a public health requirement, but oftentimes people see the aesthetics, the color of the water, and that sort of thing, like you had mentioned. And that's really the main driver of the project is to improve that situation, but also modernize or replace the aging infrastructure
Right.
that we have serving Parsons Field. Yeah.
And just for my own curiosity, the mill up above, if they had any contaminants over the years of 100 years, or would there be any possibility of tapping into some type of contaminant?
No, so there is a very rigorous, when we sited these wells, we had to work with the Main Drinking Water Program, which is under the Department of Health and Human Services for the state of Maine. They have a very rigorous water quality testing process. We had to start with an assessment. We had to look at the databases that would map any potential sources of contamination within half a mile or a mile away from the site. And then there's a study phase that kind of drills down into, the underground storage tanks in the area, things like industrial uses like a mill. And then we get down to understanding of this site, how does it relate geologically to other possible sites of contamination? So all of that was screened early on in the process. And that kind of led us to this location. And we start with initial small diameter wells to explore the subsurface before we invest in a big expensive well.
Sure.
So we do the test wells first, we sample the water quality. Water quality looks good, then we invest in a bigger test well. So first step we passed, we went to the bigger test well. And once we got to the bigger test well, we had to screen a whole host of different contaminants. You've probably heard about PFAS in the news. That's been a problem all across the country. All the PFAS was tested, it was non-detect through the course of all of the permitting for the site. So once all of that testing is done, we do a long-term pump test on the wells so we can assess, what's the long-term capacity of the well. It's a very conservative pump test. And then we sample the water quality, things like VOCs, gasoline type contaminants, arsenic. All of that stuff was included as part of the permit process, and none of those contaminants. And the good thing is that all of the treatment that we're doing, all we got to do is add disinfection for hypochlorite, and we're adding pH adjustment for corrosion control, and we are adding another chemical for corrosion control. It's a phosphate, but it's the same type of chemistry that the existing wells are being treated for. It's just where we have the less manganese in these new wells.
Okay. Has this all been provided to the planning board?
Yeah. So our application tonight, I understand we're officially in the public hearing part of it. Okay. So we had submitted our site plan application. I think it was last month. I was here to do the initial introduction of the project, which is the first step in the process. And then the planning board chair had mentioned that there was going to be a site walk, but the snowstorm canceled that, so they're going to indicate how that's going to be handled. And then we're here tonight. Later on the agenda, we're going to be formally available to present the application that the board has in front of it tonight.
Okay.
So the last sketch plan, we did get some feedback from the board on a few questions we had, but it's pretty straightforward. get to that part of the meeting, I do have a handout of like a visual of what the facility is gonna look like in a three-dimensional setting.
Okay.
And then I got plans to show as well, so.
Jen Lewis from Parsons Field also. I'm just curious about the manganese, like when you do treatment or filtration, does it take any of that out?
Yeah, so fortunately here, with the manganese, the levels are so low with the new wells, we don't have to do any physical treatment to remove it. You know, there's always gonna be trace amounts of, with the pipes out in the system, you have trace amounts on, because they're iron pipes. So there are, trace amounts of manganese and iron and other minerals that are in the pipes. Even in the wells are gonna have small levels of manganese, but they're not above and beyond, what is typical. Normally, once manganese levels get above, throw these numbers out here, but once you get above 0.05, that's when you start to see the evidence of the black staining, and that's when you essentially have to get into a physical treatment process. If we were to continue with the old wells, in order to correct the manganese, we'd have to do a very expensive treatment process. But by doing the new wells with low manganese, it's more cost effective for the community because we can still stick with the chemical treatment, which is less costly. But by finding wells with low manganese levels and iron levels. So that's the type of analysis that Maine Water did.
And you said the arsenic levels were actually not bad?
Oh, yeah, they're well below whatever the EPA regulated limit is, 10 parts per.
Radon too?
Radon, yep. Radon was below the limits. Yep.
And you're saying that above, what is it, 0.5 is okay?
So,
Or no, it's not okay, I'm sorry about that. But with all this manganese buildup in the pipes, in the water system that we drink out of, and our filter system, we go to clean it, I mean, it's a lot.
yeah, so Maine Water does, Gilman Series and operated, they have a flushing program. So once the new system's online, obviously, you're correct, over time, and they're pretty aggressive. You flush twice a year, Dylan?
We
or
flush
just-
twice a year.
Twice a year.
And as soon as the new plant goes on, we have a new well, a very extensive flushing system and tank in order to get that overflush.
How long is this gonna take before this new well is in?
So, yep, so the wells are constructed, but they're not connected. We gotta build the treatment facility. So assuming we get approval in the near term, either tonight or soon, we are prepared to, we're waiting for our final approval from one here, the planning board, and then also the drinking water program. But we're ready to advertise the project for public bids in April. We would anticipate receiving those bids by the end of May and hopefully making an award to a contractor around that time. And then construction would start likely in the June timeframe. And we're probably going to give the contractor, just because it's still contractor schedules and lead time on equipment, we're probably going to give them pretty much most of 2025 to complete the project. Okay, so the wells are constructed and permitted, but we got to build the facility. There's a building associated with the site work. There's piping to connect the wells in. And then, there's a whole host of materials, electrical materials in particular, takes sometimes 6 months to get stuff still. So there's a process to actually build the facility. So I would anticipate, based on our current timeline, somewhere towards the end of 2025, in terms of putting the new facility online. And then obviously there's going to be some flushing associated with that.
So we're gonna have to live with it for another year or more.
Yep, and that's just for the duration of the construction. But Maine Water continues to, be proactive with their flushing program. And when do you start flushing?
Probably May. We'll start flushing it.
Yeah.
That's not happy about it, just like right now.
Sir, Paul Ferris, Planning Board. With end users like herself, is there any access point at the residence somewhere where they could shock or flush themselves?
Well, I would encourage, if we can get your contact information tonight.
Sure.
At some point.
Also to make sure, verify, I'm assuming you've tested and verified there's manganese and
Oh,
not some sort of bacterial microbe.
You don't need, just come to my house and you can look in the back of my promote tape.
Right, but you know, it's a mineral deposit, not a bacteria.
No, it's
No.
not bacterial, it's
Okay.
just a mess
Yes,
to
mineral.
clean.
So, so Maine Water, Dylan's here, so Dylan's the operator in charge of this small system, but Dylan has a technical staff, a water quality manager. Maine Water's, they're all about customer service, so you want to get your contact information tonight, and they'll follow up with her, or any other
But-
individual.
but
Into
any other
my
homeowners?
house.
So I guess my question is, does the system allow for access by the homeowner?
Well,
Yeah,
you have, so the
He's
way,
already been there.
yeah, you saw the black stuff in my house.
Yes. That's why we're trying to build this plan.
Oh, there you go.
Yes.
I will try to direct us towards the, if you have any problems with current service, obviously address those with main water. This is just not the forum for that, so it sounds like we're addressed any problems with future and how that's gonna be impactful. I just wanna make sure that we're just being mindful of our time and focusing on.
yeah, so just in terms of the timing, so we're gonna be building, because the new wells are constructed, but they're just wells, they're not connected, there's no electrical to them, the pumps aren't installed, so that's all part of this contract, when we go out to bid in the facility that's gonna have the electrical equipment inside and so forth. The good thing is that, the existing facility, the existing wells will remain online and uninterrupted as we're doing this work. But there will be a cutover period. And just knowing how main water works, obviously, as we get closer to putting the plant online and doing startup and testing, I'm quite confident there'll be communication to the customers. And normally that will be in multiple forms. And, you know, usually it's a mailer probably. But there'll be ample communication to let people know what's going on. There might even be periodic updates, and I would anticipate as the project gets started, for the select board and so forth, Maine Water will probably make periodic updates, just to update the community on progress and schedule. Because as you know, with construction, you know, things, just having a pulse on updates on a project like this, you know, how are we doing? Are we on schedule, behind schedule? Any issues that have come up of any significance? And there will be, like any project that we do, so this is gonna be funded through the Maine Drinking Water Program State Revolving Fund. So it's funded through the EPA grant process, so there's, you know, there's a very attractive funding package for this facility. That's gonna include, and I don't have all the specifics, but there's gonna include some grant funding for this project, which will benefit the ratepayers as a whole. But that said, the process does require oversight. There's federal requirements like Buy American requirements in the contract, American Iron and Steel. There's Davis-Bacon wage rates that we have to meet. So we had to work with a contractor on a monthly basis. We're going to be reviewing their progress. It's going to be a monthly meeting with a contractor that's going to include Maine Water. Haven't decided where we're going to have those meetings yet, but they could be here. But the point is, there's going to be ample communication opportunities to communicate progress of the project with the leaders in town and the community as a whole as we move through the process.
Are there any plans for replacing any of the piping in town?
The only, right now, because of the cost associated with everything, there's a small upgrade that's coming with the plant, actually on our access road. But to be fair to the consumers right now, we can't just add in stuff like that. We need to get this plant built, and then as soon as we get the plant built, then we'll look at distribution upgrades. But right now, we're holding off on distribution upgrades to get
Right.
the wells and better water quality.
Right, and we've been involved, so Maine Water is an active planning process for capital projects for all the communities they work in. Wright Pierce has been involved in a lot of those planning activities, including Teaser Falls over the last few years. You know, we've reviewed the water system in Teaser Falls. You know, it became very clear as we started this process that the water quality is a major, we have to prioritize things. And, you know, the treatment facility that's down by the reservoir is in very poor condition. The wells need to be replaced. The storage tanks are in good condition. So we had to prioritize, you know, we really need to make sure the water supply and the treatment facility was modernized and replaced as a priority. although they have a long-term plan over 20 years that have identified other projects, including water main replacement projects, that have been prioritized lower than the treatment facility just because of the aging infrastructure issue. But that's kind of an ongoing process. Maine Water and Dylan, with the management team at Maine Water, they meet, I think it's about every July, we start to meet. Each system superintendent meets with management, and they review capital project needs. They look at their plan, and they say, okay, these are the projects that were on the schedule for next year. Should we reshuffle projects because we've learned that we have a problem area that came to light in the last year? So they have a plan, it's a 20-year plan, but it's revisited every year to make sure, okay, are these projects still reasonable projects to do this next year? So that's kind of the process. So I would say this is kind of the focus point, but they haven't lost sight of the other needs in the water system. But again, because it is a small community, small number of customers, you know, trying not to overwhelm the community with too much at once, and it's got to be phased over time.
I live across from the water tank.
Yep.
On Reservoir Hill. And you did some work up there the past couple of years.
If you're talking about the work this year, it was identified by when we did our yearly sanitary survey that the tank overflows had built up and the older screens had kind of fallen into disrepair. So we had to dig out underneath the tank overflows, make a 1-foot drop, add in riprap, and then attach screens to the overflows, which were already there, but we just used finer screens and help protect them.
John McGowan, Parsons Field. So you mentioned all the grant funding. Is the town also putting forward funds for this?
No, this is being funded through the financial package that Maine Water secured.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's no committed funds from the town at this time. You know, what that's, you know, obviously, ultimately the ratepayers are gonna, you know, end up funding the project over time among other user fees and stuff, you know, with other that are in place.
So you're the engineering design firm.
Yes, right.
You're
here,
the
sir.
representative.
Yeah,
So all the drawings, all the engineering is done by your firm.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So we have a centralized point of contact
Yep.
for the planning board. If we needed something, it would come from your firm.
Yes, exactly. I'm the one that, I'm the engineer, the licensed engineer,
Okay.
stamp the plans. Obviously, our firm has done the work. I've managed the project. Emma's here with me tonight. She's been one of our lead staff engineers on the project. But yes, our role is the agent for Maine Water Company. Maine Water is the applicant.
I just wanted to know that. So
Yep.
for the board's information, we wanted to know who is the engineering design firm.
Yes, right.
And you're doing it all. You're a single point of contact.
Yes, yep.
Okay.
So we're gonna be involved, right through construction. We're
You'll
gonna
be
be,
the project manager, overseer of
Yep.
everything that's happening in the different phases.
yeah, absolutely. So we're the engineer through the duration of the project, through construction. Obviously, Maine Water's gonna be actively involved.
For sure.
But yes, we are the engineer of record.
I assume you're still on the septic, right? Is there any plans for expansion of service or sewer at all? In your 20-year plan?
Oh, sewer, so Maine Water doesn't manage the sewer system. So there's no public sewer as far as I know.
No, no,
So it's just public water.
up
And
to the town.
yeah, exactly. Maine Water and other public utilities, they're really not in the business of investing in water system expansion because it's so expensive just to, keep up with what you got. So typically, in order to expand the water system, typically it's a private investment. A developer comes in and wants to do a subdivision, so they apply and invest in a water main extension for their project. That's kind of how it works. And typically, the requirements, and a lot of this stuff is regulated by the Public Utilities Commission. So they basically say, they don't want water systems investing in taking on debt for all the customers to extend water mains just to serve a handful of customers. So the state regulations kind of don't allow that to happen as part of, as an investment on the ratepayers. However, if a developer comes in and they privately fund it, and then they turn it over to the public water system for $1, then the water system will take ownership of it and then maintain it and control it. So that's kind of how things work. So you don't get, there's not a lot of incentive for developers unless there's a driving need to invest in utility expansion. Just because there's so much investment that's needed just to just look around and see all the bridges that need to be worked on and stuff. And the water system, you don't see it because it's pipes in the ground, but it's just like the rusty bridges, you know? It's the same type of stuff we're dealing with across the country.
Who owns the lot the new facility is being built up?
Main water.
Main Water.
Yep.
Okay, all that. And so the old facility, what's the plan for that? Once in 2025, the new facility's up and running, what
Yeah.
happens to the old one?
So that's a little bit indeterminate at this time. I think there's 2 buildings over there. The well building, my guess is will be decommissioned. There's another building, you can correct me if I'm wrong, where your existing kind of office area is.
So we're gonna kind of keep it right now. In the design of this plan, we realized we did not plan for an OSHA certified break room. And we need to keep that area as an OSHA certified break room to comply with OSHA standards.
Yeah, so that, I mean, the facility, although it doesn't meet the needs now for a modern treatment facility, the building structure can be upgraded and it can be used for general office space. So that would be the intent.
Plan for increased usage from the town, expansion.
Yeah.
How many years can you provide?
There's more than adequate. We've done the projections, obviously, Parsonsfield's typical of rural Maine communities. We look at population projections as the big driver, and obviously you're not seeing a lot of growth in the community. So the wells themselves are actually significantly higher capacity than what the community will need for the foreseeable future. So I think, Dylan, the average day is what, 150,000 gallons a day or something like that, 100,000?
Yeah, and we are not really utilizing our tanks as well as we could.
Yeah.
We actually probably turn one of the tanks off. So we are in good shape to grow.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so so we got 2 wells. Each well has been demonstrated to be able to pump, up to 250 gallons a minute. Okay. So that's over, 300,000 gallons per day. So there's plenty of capacity there. What that does, it gives you flexibility. So Maine Water could pump at a higher flow rate for less hours, or they could pump at a lower flow rate for longer hours. And that will help them manage the water age in their system. The other thing that this project is going to provide for the community is it's going to have backup power on site with a automatic transfer switch. Whereas now, if there's a power failure, obviously Maine Water and the community has the luxury of having a lot of storage in their system, so they can go multiple days without pumping water. But the Maine Water is set up, they can bring in a portable generator within that response time. However, by having a modern generator, it just frees up, because Maine Water, operates this system, but they also operate Freiburg area and other areas, so that the guys are floating around. So in terms of response time, having a generator that's there, ready to go when you need it, is really going to be an asset to this facility.
It's fully automated too.
It's fully automated, it's going to be a propane generator, so it's a clean burning.
What size are you thinking of? Over 30?
The generator, it's a 50 kW. Yeah.
That's like a 50.
Yeah, so each well pump is a 25 horsepower pump. Okay, so it's sized to run, one of the well pumps plus the basic loads in the facility. And all of the power, so the controls for the pumps are going to be in the building. The power out to the wells is underground power.
In the new facility.
Yeah.
Had you designed in the package, because I haven't looked at it in quite a bit of detail yet, the state-of-the-art filtration system? Because I talked I talk to these guys every now and then.
Yeah.
And I know what they got now.
Yeah.
And it's not the best in the world.
Mhm.
But I want to know if this new system, is it the state-of-the-art filtration system that can take out just about, this newer system can take about anything out of the water?
Right. So the good thing is that these wells, yeah, because of the,
I'm not. I want to know about the filtration
right,
system.
so there's no filter system.
Oh, there's not.
There's not a filter system. It doesn't require one. So it's a groundwater system. The iron and manganese is very low, well below any standards. Turbidity is very low.
Right.
Does not require.
I used to run a membrane filtration system you're talking about. You do not want that. I know it seems like a great idea on paper. You don't want that. The quality of water that you're getting out of these wells far way exceeds what you end up getting. And the cost of operation would cripple the town.
But the other thing is, your filtration system now is not the best in the world.
They don't have a filtration. There's no
Do
filter.
you have some, well, the guy I talked to told me what he put in there, what he's changed the filters down there on the wall. I talked to one of your guys.
So he's talking about we have very sensitive equipment.
Yeah.
And we run it through just a regular filter.
Yeah.
We're not gonna have one of those in the new plant.
Okay.
We don't need it. That's.
Is that a filter like on the plant water or something like that, an analyzer?
It's just an analyzer, just
Yeah, okay.
because the CL17 is so finicky.
Yeah, so what, sir, just to clarify, the filter that you're referring to or what the operator might have.
It don't have to be a membrane. There's various types of these modern filters.
Right, but I guess what we're saying is that the water quality standards of the new wells do not justify an investment in a filter plant. And I could tell you that it would double the cost of this project. And I know there's I think there's 400 customers in Parsonsfield. And so again, I think everyone is mindful of, the cost of the community. And again, our goal was when we located these wells, and the goal was to balance, and we get better water quality to avoid the more costly treatment process, which is what we feel we've accomplished.
Is there the ability to expand and put it in that system?
There is, yeah,
Without
there was some.
significant cost as far as like having the ability to plan for it now?
Yeah, we did design the building, so the gable end of the building could be expanded if something changed in the future. The biggest thing in the future, whenever you're doing treatment, is new regulations that we don't know about today, okay? And down the road, maybe there is a more stringent manganese regulation coming down the road that requires a more costly investment. We did think about that when we did the planning. The building is set up, so it could be expanded in one area. That would take some reconfiguration of the site, but it can be done. So we did think about that as we did lay out the site. But we don't think it's gonna be required, but we did think about it as far as expandability.
They used to not think they'd ever need more than 512 memory in a computer too.
Oh, I know.
Because it ran perfectly fine.
Exactly. But no, we thought about it, we didn't lose sight of the fact that changes happen. I've been in this business 20 years. And I've seen the new regulations. The PFAS wasn't on the radar for most of the public 5 years ago. Now it's everywhere. There's been a settlement with 3M and DuPont, billions of dollars, and we're doing those types of treatment projects all across Maine, or studies right now. Fortunately, they're not main water systems, but they're going on across the state.
What about something as easy as a UV light? If we don't want to pick on
So
memories.
UV wouldn't do anything to benefit the water quality here. I mean, UV is used as an alternative disinfectant for surface waters. And again, the filtering, the UV light, that's more for if you were drawing water from a lake or a pond.
You guys apply some sort of treatment though, versus filtering, you apply treatment?
Yeah, so we're adding chemicals. So we had sodium hypochlorite for disinfection, which is a groundwater, for disinfection residual. We are adding what they call soda ash, which is currently added now to raise the pH.
Yep.
And then there's another chemical which they're adding now. It's a phosphate that works with the soda ash, and it helps to control corrosion in the system. It also helps if there's iron and manganese in the existing pipes. It helps to kind of manage that as well. So I would say it's a chemical addition versus a physical filter process. Yeah.
I just want to mention one thing. I know from the inside of my tank, this is probably the wrong one. I go down to Cornish Hardware and they have these tablets you can put in the bottom of your tank.
In the toilets?
Your regular toilet.
Yep.
Vacuum, and you flush it, you put it in the corner, you let it go, and it cleans up all that stuff that's in whatever buildup there is in the tank. And that works pretty good. It doesn't do anything to the shower head, but this works in the toilet.
And Dylan, do you know when the consumer confidence reports come out?
I just reviewed a couple of final drafts to be posted, so I think it should be coming out very soon.
Yeah, so just keep in mind, and that gets mailed to all the customers, I'm assuming.
I can't remember if we still mail it or if it's on the website.
Okay.
Definitely on the website.
Yeah, definitely on the website.
But basically, there'll be, so annually, Maine Water, all public water, so this is an EPA requirement, is required to submit a consumer confidence report to all the customers. And I can't remember, I think the requirement, maybe it just has to be posted on their website, but usually there's some sort of communication with the billing system process. But anyways, you can go on and see a summary of the water quality. And this is all required by EPA. This has been in effect for about 15 years or so. And provides a description of the system, what type of treatment is utilized, where the water comes from, all of that sort of thing. I know the town would get a copy of it, but that is certainly something, again, Maine Water has a water quality manager. And certainly if there's any other questions that come up, they are very good about, meeting with individuals or meeting with town leaders to address questions and concerns. And I know they've had some initial reach out with the town leaders about the project before we started this process.
This question for Eric, is Powerhouse Road a public road or private?
Private.
It's private. Okay.
It's public road going in.
Yes.
What, up into the gate?
Well, no, Powerhouse Road out to, what's the intersection?
Gardner.
Gardner Avenue,
Yeah, that's public. And then Powerhouse is private.
right from there.
There's a lot of heavy equipment that goes in that way too, which tears up the road. So
And it looks like you're proposing to put fencing in across the street from the new facility?
Nope.
That squiggly thing is fencing?
There could be some, are they colored?
Right, so this looks like fencing here, right?
Oh, that's,
Squiggly stuff. and
it's
then
like
the
a
other-
wetland kind of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I thought that was your cedar fencing.
No, no, no.
Sorry.
Cedar fencing is just on the south side of the building,
Just the south
Yeah.
side, okay.
provide more of a visual obstruction for the neighbors.
This could be the last question. You mentioned something about cost and the generators. There's no generators right now?
No, there isn't. No, they have access to a portable, they would have to bring to the
All right,
site.
because I just didn't know, because I know when the power goes out, the village always has water. So
Yeah, so so the storage tanks provide the pressure in the system.
Sure.
So the storage tanks, as I mentioned, there's a lot of storage compared to how much water is actually used. So it has allowed the system to operate and have the ability to take the time to bring a generator to the site because you have all that storage. And that keeps the system pressurized, so you don't lose water pressure. Okay? But by having the generator, it reduces that risk. So if you had another big ice storm, for instance, like in '98, and the power was out for days.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to worry about, maintaining a portable generator, refueling it all the time and that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, it's just that you mentioned cost, because the generator that's gonna up your cost.
Yeah, no, it certainly adds costs to the overall project, but I think with the attractiveness of the funding and the amount of potential grant funding involved,
Yep.
it's hard not to include something like that.
Sure, no,
Yeah.
I get it.
Yes, but it does, you're correct.
Okay.
I have one more. All right, we live on Gardner Avenue, and they come with heavy equipment, they come in our way because that turn is easier on the end.
Okay.
That road gets tore up.
Okay.
Who's gonna repair it if it's torn up by the heavy equipment coming in?
Yeah, so as part of our bid documents, we're gonna be doing, and I think as a follow-up, Dylan will probably take some photos. But we always do pre-construction photos and we require the contractor to document pre-construction conditions, okay? Of any of the travel ways that are required to navigate through the project site. So if there's any significant damage or, if you can clearly indicate that, the contractor's activities caused the damage, it'll be on the contractor to repair that.
Because there was heavy equipment coming in this summer.
Yeah.
And that road had been repaired at the curve area, but now it's
Okay.
pretty bad again.
Yeah, and, maybe we can also, maybe reach out to Public Works too. I don't know what the overall paving plan is for the general neighborhood, if there's a schedule to do anything. But that's definitely a detail we can look into. But so as part of this project, Powerhouse Road will, within our project limits, if you've been down there, the road is just torn up. I mean, it's all alligator crack. So by the time we put in the water mains and everything, there's not gonna be nothing left of Powerhouse Road. So all of that's gonna be repaved. Nope, we're gonna maintain, no, we're trying to meet, there's gonna be some cost sharing with the owner, the dam owner, Eagle Creek, I think is the name of the company. But basically, we're gonna maintain the existing pavement limits. We're not changing the grades or anything.
You don't need to expand for any reason.
No, it's about, I think it's a single lane road. It's 12 or 14 feet wide.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's plenty wide and the cleared width of the gate is over 16 feet. So the first planning board meeting, there was some discussions about emergency vehicle. And we have plenty of space, access for emergency services, fire trucks. So none of that's going to change. But certainly if there's an opportunity, working with the town, certainly if there's a section of the road that, it's going to be the primary public way, that's the primary access point, we definitely want to identify that now. And if we need to build in some additional costs to make sure, we want things to look good when we're there. That's where we all want to be.
Vegetation around the plant, I noticed that there's some sort of access to one of the wellheads, that all has to be removed, the trees removed.
Yeah, so when the wells were put in, there's two wells. There's one off from just really close to Powerhouse, I think that's HD 4. And then there's one up on the hill, that's the one we put the gravel road in to be able to build the well. So that was the first, so that gravel area is gonna stay. And then we are minimizing, if you're familiar with the site, the area that we're developing is an old excavation pit on the property, okay? So that the trees have been allowed to grow up over the years. It probably hasn't been used for, I'm guessing, 40 years or so. So out of the whole property, we are focusing, we identified that as, because it's been previously disturbed. And so we're gonna limit our clearing kind of to the gravel pit limits. And that's gonna be where we build the facility. And what that's gonna do, all of the other forest that's undisturbed will remain as land protection to protect the aquifer and the wells. So we wanted to focus it was kind of lined up, and it was a great opportunity to develop that former excavation area while maintaining, without having to clear the older growth trees on the property.
Is that to the left or to the right as you go in the gate?
Yeah, so as you go through the gate, right on the left.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's all right.
Yeah, if you get a chance to, walk down there tomorrow or whatever, you can clearly see it's an old pit. It's probably a gravel pit. And what we're trying to do is, so we're gonna be clearing that area within the pit, and we're gonna be building the bottom of the pit up, 3 or 4 feet or so to get the building up high enough. And, the building's gonna be a couple feet above the road, but the building's gonna be set back 50 feet. So there's gonna be some natural slopes of the old pit that will still be exposed. And once the grading is done, we're just gonna let that grow up naturally. So any of the roots that are still in the ground on those slopes after we have to cut things to do the grading, those trees will grow back up in those slopes, yeah. And then the rest of the facility will just be, of course, the driveway going in, there'll be pavement there. But everything else will be grass. And then main water, they typically mow the lawns and stuff around the facility.
That was some fun stuff there.
Yeah.
And you maintain the plowing and everything on that?
Yes. Thank you.
We hire, like this, and you don't use salt or anything like that?
Kelly did.
Some, a little bit.
A little bit, they use some, I walk that road all the time, so I know you use a little bit of salt.
And I don't think that'd be
We
a
have-
real
we have
concern
to.
over, going into well water because that's so key.
Well,
There's a lot of filtration of ground between the water.
I would say the critical part, I don't know what the plan is for maintaining the roads, but I would say that the hill going down, once you get past the well, that's when it starts going down that steep hill. So I just assume, I'm just assuming they try to focus the salt on that area and not so much on the flatter area, but I would say as a general, Mary Jane's on top of this stuff from a water quality standpoint, but obviously minimizing the amount of salt, I'm sure is the policy.
Where this project is mostly grant funded, do you guys expect any severe increases to cost of operations?
So that's, we don't have the answers to those questions because that's, part of main water. So I guess I can't answer that. Obviously there is, it's not 100% grant. How that works out over time, I don't know the specifics, but I know main water, they certainly have conversations well in advance of any impacts to rates. But in terms of operational costs, because we're not adding a filter system, so the operational cost will not change. So we're still going to be adding the same chemistry. Actually the chemical dosing actually might be less because of the water quality of the wells. But again, in the big scheme, it's not, for all intents and purposes, the operational costs are going to be the same. But obviously it is a capital project. So looking at, the amount of debt, the debt service, ultimately that's going to go into play, and other factors. How that works out and the big funding models and the time, factoring in time, those are certainly questions I'm sure Maine Water at some point will be available to speak to the select board of other communities.
So in the planning of this project, you did consider the cost implications to the customer?
Well,
Is that what you're saying?
Well, they're an engineer.
No, I know. I'm asking a generalized question.
Yeah, so, the price of everything has gone up. I cannot hide that fact. When I first started, 5 or 6 years ago here in Maine Water, it was, $1 million a mile for fresh pipe. That's for if something goes bad.
That's too much.
Now you do a dance if you get anything under 2 million. Unfortunately, the price will always go up. We try to stay ahead of things to keep a constant growth so we don't have the big shocks. If we don't do small increment raises here and there, we get the big shocks. And we try to keep the big shocks and try to even things out as much as possible. As we're regulated by the PUC, so we can't just be like, 80%, here's the bill. We have to go through a process. We have to be, this is what we've done, this is what we have done, this is what we have for infrastructure, this is our operation cost, this is our bill now, and they allow us to go out an amount.
Now, in terms of the analysis I alluded to earlier, there's, they do the master planning, they hire engineers like Wright Pierce to help them prioritize things, okay? Because the fact of the matter is, everyone has to invest in infrastructure, okay? Every community, we're a small community. A lot of the communities have the same issues. Obviously, when you can spread it over a bigger rate population, there's less impact. But part of the reasoning for focusing on the new wells with better water quality was thinking ahead. We had to do something about the wells in the existing treatment facility. And by finding the wells and the water quality that we have, we're able to minimize the capital investment in the new treatment facility. Whereas if we were to retain the old wells with the poor water quality, we were going to replace with just the treatment facility, we would be doing a more complicated filter system. But then that would require more chemistry, more waste handling, probably more clearing of the property, put a lagoon system in, and instead of the order of magnitude of the project, it would double. So I really do feel that based on the size of the community, I think the solution that Maine Water is putting forth here is the most cost-effective option long term.
Let me answer your question. Every day I think about cost for the community.
So I operate this facility. I was reviewing financial stages. Apples, oranges, but not the same. One small portion of my business, my electric bill, for example, went up 700% from last year. So
In Maine Water,
if you're trying to spread a new facility's cost over 400 people in a community that doesn't have a lot of wealth, they're going to be bleeding from their pockets just to have water.
To piggyback on your concern, Maine Water is present in town because the residents don't have any other option, is that correct? Or there's a law or ordinance that forces those residents to have to have some sort of facility.
And so we,
Well, they get somewhere along the line, the government and your funding is also through grants or taxpayer money, right? Water.
we are a privately owned company, but
So they could have a choice and not be customers of Maine Water somehow, is that correct?
yeah, you're right, yeah.
I think any existing customer could choose to drill a well with
And code, like, she could drill it well at her resident where she is. There's spacing issues, right, because of lots?
It's a spacious issue.
the setbacks and stuff, but I would say,
Per lot.
yeah,
We got plenty.
Well, I'm kind of getting at, it sounds like Maine Water is really a facility that works and is regulated by the government, and a lot of tax money comes their way. Why would the receiver of that, as a resident, have to pay another fee if their taxes are already paid? It's not for you to answer, it's more the public, but
So,
just for the public to think about. Like,
So
well,
to
they're already
answer-
paying for it, she's already paying for her water through taxes. Why does she have to pay again for the usage of it?
so we're getting a new facility with grants and tax money.
Yeah.
The operations, the fact
But
that.
the operation costs aren't going up, so the build cost
They
is
are-
going to the
well,
resident.
No, they are.
they are going up.
They're going up.
I kind of misspoke. In terms of,
Okay, well, that's a big difference than if operation costs are going up.
I kind of misspoke. I was trying to, the message I was trying to send is that if we were thinking of operational costs as volume, like volume of water.
Yep.
The volume of the chemistry, the volume of the volume of electricity, the volume of chemicals will be the same. But all of those are going up.
So to answer his question, to answer your question, everything's going up. This facility will be easier for us to operate and will take less time for us to operate.
So
But
will the cost
that's-
go down?
That's such a small piece of the pie when you're looking at it. That's like looking at a bread factory, picking up a crumb and saying, here's waste. By the time it gets in, it's, like I said, $1 million for a mile of pipe.
Yeah.
Or $4 million for this.
For 400 customers.
And I would
It's a
say-
lot. That's a small customer.
Exactly. So,
And try to recoup that finances that you're putting into it, that investment is near impossible.
yeah, so keep in mind, and again, tonight, there's gonna be additional conversations. Obviously, Maine Water's got a financial person that can really speak to all these questions. And their vice president, who couldn't be here tonight, they're gonna probably have, at some point, they're gonna have more meetings that is just gonna focus on those types of questions. I can tell you that the way the funding, any of the loan portion of the SRF funding involved in this project, is basically a 30-year debt service commitment. So it's something that's spread out over 30 years. So, those are the types of things, main water, whatever portion of the debt service is involved in any future rate increases or phase rate increases. That's what main water, will be, talking to the community about at some point in time, which I don't have the answer to tonight. But I can tell you the strategies that led us here tonight with our design work. Our goal is to, one, improve water quality for the customers. Two, replace aging infrastructure. And three, to provide infrastructure that is modern and could meet all the requirements of a regulated community water system in terms of security, things like operational safety. This facility is going to have an emergency eye wash, which they don't have now. So there's all kinds of safety things we're addressing with this project. With the building itself, we're meeting all the new energy code standards for insulation. So even though it's a bigger facility, there's a lot more energy efficiency built into it. Now, main water, when they do all of this analysis, you got the debt service, you got the, chemistry and all this sort of thing. All of that gets analyzed. You got some that are more expensive, some that are less. In the end, there's probably going to be a net, increase in service. But overall, trying to make that investment the best decision financially for the community. So, but I understand.
And also,
In trying to leverage as much funding, low interest rates or free money that can be leveraged. And I can tell you, this right now, as you know, there's been a lot of infrastructure funding for communities. So now is the time. And I know it always hurts to borrow money and take on more, but it's never going to get cheaper than it is now. So.
I don't know if it's the main water since we're making the investment.
Well, it wouldn't really change anything, I don't think, because, again, it's more complicated than what we can talk about tonight. But, whether the town owns it or main water owns it, then the town is responsible for the same operational costs. They're still responsible to, if you look at water system, Dillon's a licensed operator. It's required to be, it's a licensed position. So if like the town were to operate the system, you'd have to hire licensed people, and you'd have to, they have to do continuing education, and it is a highly regulated job.
All right, I'm going to circle us back. I'm going to rein us in here because we are so far outside of what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about a building. I'm going to enter in, we did receive one email from a resident said, first, let me state without question that clean water for the town of Parsonsfield is the obligation of the water company, and I'm in favor of that. Originally, it appeared that the wastewater tank was partially above ground. Originally, the fence was going to be a chain link fence, when I attended a meeting held by the Saco River Commission. So they changed that to a stockade fence, which is a better solution, helps keep the residential feel of the area. Currently, there's probably a 50-foot cleared area between the adjacent property line and the new facility. How many additional, so they have a few questions here. How many additional feet of natural barrier or trees are going to be left to preserve the current residential status versus a commercial facility? And also, during the construction and clearing phase of the land, will the current trees be left as the natural barrier, or is the plan to use the stockade fence as the barrier and possibly plant new trees with the idea that trees and shrubs take years to grow and will not provide a natural barrier to the homeowners for many years? And that was received from Joan Medlin.
Looks like 65 feet of buffer trees.
Yeah, so if you look, and I think did you all get a copy of the rendering I sent around? And certainly, if it's appropriate, I can share this with the public. But this is kind of a visual representation, and you can just take one and pass it along.
Sure.
Basically, when you look at the plan, there's, on the aerial image, it's showing, they took a photograph of the trees with all the leaves out and stuff. So we scaled off about 65 feet of the tree buffer remaining between the lawn and the residential abutting property. It's approximately, I would say in round numbers, it's about 50 feet buffer. approximately. Those trees are gonna remain. And what we're doing, the stockade fence would be on the inside of the trees. So you're gonna have the stockade fence. So in the winter time, like right now, when the leaves are all off the trees, you'll be able to see, parts of the stockade fence, right? But that stockade fence is gonna provide that additional screening that person, was looking for. So we're not, so the good thing is that we are able to retain that natural buffer. I think the ordinance requires a minimum of 25 feet, so we're providing that, and then we're also providing the stockade fence on top of that.
And then, in reference to a question about, possibly planting new trees, are there gonna be any new plants being placed in?
Yeah,
between?
we don't currently envision doing plantings. We don't have a landscaping plan because we are retaining that buffer and with a stockade fence. And just my experience, and I'm assuming that email, the abutter that sent that email, I'm assuming it's the adjacent abutter on the corner.
No, it's not her.
It's not her? Okay. Well, I can tell you that in the back of the lawn area, there's some existing evergreens and so forth on the abutting property that will remain there as well.
Yeah.
So I think once you add all those things up, I don't think there's a real need for, because what we're doing is where we leave off with our clearing limit, we want to put the stockade fence as close to that as possible. So we're not anticipating leaving a buffer where we have to plant a bunch of trees, because we wanted to maintain the tall growth there.
So in answer to her question, the intent is to leave the current 65 feet or so
65 to
natural
50,
barrier
yeah, yeah.
plus the stockade.
Plus the stockade fence, yeah.
Great.
So she would be about 100 and almost 200 feet from the edge of our house.
Yep.
So she's gonna be in the middle of that stockade fence. That's where her land would divide.
Okay.
Any further questions?
I just wondered, who owns Maine Water? I know it says Maine Water, but
Great.
Thank you.
who?
San Jose Water.
San Jose Water.
Yeah.
What's your call, San Jose Water?
Each one of their subdivisions has its own name.
Last opportunity for questions, public comment? Okay. Go ahead and close the public hearing for Maine Water Company, Matthews 3 Lot 8, Powerhouse Road. Do you want to stop and take a couple minutes and give everybody a chance for an hour in before we just start everything right back up, or?
Yeah, is there a way to possibly-
I think you'll probably just have to stop it and start it
Do it
again.
again? Okay.
So those, if anybody's out there watching on Facebook, we're gonna stop this and the new video will start shortly with a regular meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Pull it up on my phone here. You can point it out.
So that's where this.
Well, I only got one bar.
It's okay.
But so
It's what?
So this is the intersection, what's the public road here?
Garden.
Garden, so this is, so power intersection.
Okay, so you would go this way,
Yeah.
but you're this
This way,
way.
okay.
And this is exactly like the curves down.
Okay.
My husband has this
Okay.
They gotta get rid of it.
What am I gonna do? Okay.
So I don't know with the big equipment.
Oh, really? You work for contract? Oh, you did? Okay.
Oh,
Did you retire?
no. I used to.
Really?
But it's right in this code that it breaks down.
Oh, okay, yeah, because you're going around the 20, it's a stress.
Yeah, so that's the only.
Oh, see, I don't do a lot of, I'm on